Okay, Hadley, in this video I'm going to show you how to create a bar graph. Before we get into it though, there's a few things that we should know. First of all, here's an example of what a completed bar graph looks like. It's nice and colorful. We don't necessarily need to have colors in ours, but looking at this, there's a few things that I want you to keep in mind. So you can see that bar graphs are really great if we want to visualize frequency. So if we have a frequency table and we want to plot that out to show a visual, a bar graph is a great way to do it. Another thing that you need to know in a bar graph is that each bar is separate, like you can see here, and each bar is the same width. Okay? Your graph needs a title, and you should also be describing what's going on your vertical and horizontal axis as well. And I'm going to get into what those are, don't you worry. Last but not least, when you're drawing your frequency, the interval that you go up by always has to be the same. Think of this like skip counting. In other words, if I start by counting by ones or going up by ones on the vertical, I'm not going to all of a sudden go up by threes or fives. I have to stick with going up by ones. Same thing if I start going by twos, I have to stick with going up by twos, etc., etc. Okay, let's get into building our own. You can see that I have my frequency table up here. That's on purpose. You're going to want to keep your frequency table handy because that's where all your data is going to come from. The other thing you're going to need for this is a ruler. So make sure that you have that somewhere nearby as well. Okay. Step 1 says I have to draw my two axes and label them. Okay, an axis or axes, that's how you pronounce it, not axes like chopping axe, is just the vertical and horizontal line that makes the graph. So I'm going to grab a ruler and I'm going to use black in this case, and I'm going to start by drawing a nice straight line here. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the vertical. You can see I've drawn my nice vertical and horizontal lines. The next thing I need to do is actually label them. So I need to know what each of these are. So I'm going to be writing my categories on the horizontal. So what that means in this case is my movie genres are going to be on the horizontal, or what we call the x-axis. Okay, you're going to learn a lot about x and y axis in grade 8. Just know for now that the horizontal is the x and the vertical is the y. So all of my movie genres are going to be on the x-axis. That means my frequency is going to be on the y-axis. So in this case, I'm just going to write the word frequency so that we know that everything that's going to be here is on there. Okay, so that's step 1 done. Step 2 says I need to write the category name, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to also take my ruler out for this because I want to space all my category names evenly. Organization is really key because it's going to help people read our graph properly. So I'm going to organize myself by spacing out these properly. So how am I going to do that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up one mark. In your case, you can use the 0 point of your ruler. I'm going to line it up on the corner of my graph. And I'm going to use a ruler to make a tick mark at a specific distance so that each of them is evenly spread out. In my case, I'm going to use this one right here. So every time I see a little dot like that, I'm just going to write a little dot so that I know that's where each of my categories is going to go. Okay. So they're all evenly spaced. So now I can write their names in. Okay, so you can see that I've drawn their names in. You can also see that because I know they were going to be too squished if I wrote them all in the same line, I kind of spaced them out to make sure that each one was visible and very easy to see. So those are the category names. Next step, I'm going to have to decide on an interval to write my frequency. And what does that mean? All that means is I need to know how I'm going to skip count to draw my numbers on my line here. Okay, now here's how I'm going to do that. The biggest number that I need, the highest I'm ever going to go is going to be the biggest number in my frequency table, which is going to be 21. Okay, so that means the biggest number that I need to go to on my vertical axis is going to be 21. So I can decide maybe to go up by ones, but in this case, I think I'm going to go up by twos, which is going to mean that I'm going to need 11 tick marks, because 11 times 2 is 22, just above 21. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my ruler out again, and I'm going to line it up vertically and put a tick mark at an even spacing. Okay, so in my case on this ruler, I'm going to go every 4 spaces, or every 4 little marks is going to be 1 mark for me. So here's 1. So I have even marks all the way up my graph. Now I can mark them up. So I said I was going to go up by 2s. That means I'm going to be skip counting by 2, which means that my first number is going to be 2, and I'm just going to keep going up from there. And I can see that this 14 kind of looks like a 19 here, so I'm just going to fix that. Again, being organized and clear is the name of the game here. Great, so that is step 3 complete. Now I have to actually draw the bars. I need to show how high each one of these frequencies goes for each category. So how am I going to do that? Well, it would be very easy if I had graph paper. That's why they call it graph paper, because it's good for drawing graphs. I would be able to just line up the lines on the graph paper to where I need to find them and then just draw my bar that way. I don't have graph paper, and I'm going to assume that sometimes you might not have lined paper or graph paper either. So we're going to do this the old-fashioned way. The first thing I'm going to do is a little bit of a trick here. I need to make sure that my bars are evenly spaced. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my ruler and put it right in the middle of that category here. So I have an equal amount of my ruler on either side. That way, I'm going to make each bar the length of my ruler. Okay, so I can actually take that, move it over here, and do the same thing across, so that I know the width of my bar is going to be equal for every line that I have. You might not be able to do it. If that's the case for you, depending on the size of your graph, then what you can do instead is just measure out a certain distance to make each bar. So 1 centimeter or 2 centimeters, whatever works for you. Next thing is I get to look at my frequency table. Horror has a frequency of 17. So I'm going to grab my ruler again, and I'm going to draw a line all the way up to where 17 is. So 17 is right in the middle of 16 and 18. So there's one line connecting that bar. And then I should go to the other side and do the same thing. Comedy is 16. So I'll do the same thing for comedy. Going to 16. Drama is 7, so it's a lot less. So I'm going to go to 7. Again, I'm keeping my ruler in between the spaces so I can easily draw my lines. So 6 is here, 7 is here. I'm getting as close as I can. I want this to be as even as possible. So I got to go to action next, and action is 21. That's our big one. So let's get a ruler. 21 is all the way up here. Perfect. Rom-com is next. Rom-com is 14, and the last one is 20. So we have 14. And the last one is 20, science fiction. Gotta love science fiction. No? Am I the only nerd? Okay. Great. So of course our bars aren't complete. I just drew nice straight lines. And what you can do now is take your ruler and cap off these bars. I'm just going to do it by eye. It's not going to be perfect. Yours is going to be perfect. Perfectly straight across. And that way we can tell exactly what we are getting here. So we've just drawn our bar graph. There's only one last thing to do, and that is give our graph a title. And luckily, because we're working from a frequency table, we actually know the title of our graph. It's not necessarily what's your favorite movie genre, but the title of our graph could be something like, I'm going to write this out. Let's do it in red so that it shows. Favorite movie genres of Hadley Filament students. Mine's a bit squished here, but yours is going to be perfect. And that's it. That is our completed bar graph. I know this was a long video, but you're going to see that this is a very specific one for building a graph. And our next series of videos on histograms and broken line graphs are going to start the same way. So if you can master drawing a bar graph, the steps involved, then you'll be able to draw a histogram and a broken line graph a lot easier. So I will see you in the next video.